For her birthday, I took my girlfriend Katie to Arizona so we could stay with some friends of hers and spend a few weeks partying and getting crazy with stuff, before heading back to school for the following year. We drove up in my dad's car. It's a really old Ford make, and it's pretty beat up. The road there was bumpy and long, and our relationship seemed strongest on the road. We really were in love. That's the first time that I realized that I've never truly been in love before. We were about halfway there when we realized that we were gonna run out of gas long before the nearest petrol station. Katie's head was out the window, sunglasses on, blistering heat outside. Nothing but the wild desert landscape could be seen in all directions, and we became frantic. We hadn't seen another car on the road for almost an hour. What if we broke down here? In the middle of the desert, no food, no water, with no one out here to find us. I sped up slightly, driven by fears. It was then when we came across a gas station, smack bang in the middle of nowhere in the dry, empty nothingness that was this desert. It was in an old worn-down servo. Long yellow grass blew in the breeze beneath it, and outside were two rusted pumps. At first, we didn't know if it was occupied. It seemed so lifeless. But as we pulled in and saw the petrol stains in the dirt, I was convinced otherwise. Katie started refilling the car, and I went inside to pay and grab something to eat on the road. When I first went to the shop door, it was jammed, and this perturbed me. So I looked up at the sign to check, and I was reassured that the store was indeed open according to the torn sign that hung between the dull yellow curtains at the door window. I pushed harder, and with effort, I got into the shop. Inside, it was totally abandoned and left to ruin. Complete aisles lay on the ground, the fridges were smashed in, and glass coated the floor. Despite the brightness on the outside, the interior of the gas station was dark and bitterly cold. Then came that thing from behind me, a quiet weeping, like a child's weeping. I felt my heart race at this time, and it was coming from the back room. I stepped over some smashed glass, twisted remnants of metal on the floor, and over a few patches of grass that had grown through the little patches of the aisle that still remained. I ran my hand along the wall, and I felt the crisscross of ivy beneath my fingers. It was overgrown. There came the cry again, and now I was facing the back room door. It was directly in front of me. I pushed the door open, and it creaked with rusted joints. Inside lay several wooden steps that led into a basement. It was pitch black there, and the smell was awful. The drip of water alerted me to the fact that the basement was indeed also flooded. The water was up to my knees, and again, there came the crying. And a small splash in the far corner of the basement. Hello? Anyone there? I called out. I started approaching the corner. Again, the smell was getting more rancid and horrible the closer you got, and eventually the water got to me. The sobbing was also getting louder and louder. In the corner, I swear I saw something amongst the shadows. Hello? What's wrong? I finally reached the corner. It was still dark. I had to bend down to avoid pipes which leaked down my back and trickled down my spine. The figure was in front of me, very small and black and hunched over, sobbing quietly. The hunching figure also seemed to be having its head in its hands. I could not really make out any discernible details about what it was. Hey, why are you here? Then it stopped moving completely. It was totally still. All noise seemed to cease, but except for the quiet dripping of a broken pipe somewhere behind me. I outstretched my arm to touch his tiny shoulder, but then it slowly turned in my direction to look me in the eye. As his face swiveled around to look into mine, I remember some sort of screaming, and I remember swinging my head up in recoil, cracking it onto pipes above. Its face was white as a sheet, pale and hideous, like a moving mask almost. The eyes and mouth were completely they're just black holes, huge, widening even as I looked at them. They were so huge they almost consumed the entire face. As I desperately tried to escape, it splashed towards me in a rapid speed, uncurling its long, thin fingers. It was now wallowing staring directly at me with its huge black eyes, and I started to scramble up the stairs with great difficulty as I felt my legs begin to give way under me. Have you guys tried to run through water? It's incredibly difficult, and it started weighing down. It sprinted out of the water and up the stairs towards me. I slammed the door, flipped the lock, and I tore out of the store into the old Ford. Kitty began to laugh when she saw me, jeans wet, trembling, sweat soaking my chest, but I grabbed her and screamed at her to fucking drive. For about a half hour, I could barely tell her what happened in the store. She listened to me and gave me a look of sheer horror. When I finally gave in and told her everything, she pulled the car to the side and began to cry herself. I asked her what the fuck was wrong. She said, "I saw something while you were gone. When you were in the store, I was putting my pump back when I saw a little girl and a man, her father, I guessed. The father stared at me with these black eyes and a hanging jaw. But the girl, oh God, that girl. She was staring right at me, grinning with this weird, huge smile that stretched unnaturally so far across her face. I couldn't see any hair on her, and her skin was so dark. No, not dark. Not like a colored girl, but dark like a shadow. And her smile just shone through the window. I convinced myself that it was a trick of the eye, and I looked away. And when I looked back, they were gone. Then a little later, you came out. Now, if it ended there, the story would be rather short, but our adventure still continued down to Arizona. It was dusk by now, and we had nowhere to stay. We had traveled nearly as much as we hoped to that day, and the nearest motel meant going past that gas station, probably needing to stop at it again. So we just drove up the roadside, where we were, into a little clearing a little way up. There were people who camped there sometimes, and obviously we had to come the night after a big party, or at least where a usual festival took place. There was broken glass everywhere. When we arrived, however, it was empty. After a while, I tried to reassure her that we were okay. I calmed her down, put my arms around her, and we started to kiss. I moved to get close to her, and that's when she suddenly screamed like hell. She was screaming something like, "It's her! It's her!" She was screeching, fumbling to start the engine. I turned and just in time to witness the small black face grinning literally ear to ear with only darkness inside. It was crawling into the car through my open window, its limbs splayed out like a fucking insect. I should also mention that it had way too many limbs and way too long of arms. The fingers feeling my face like antenna, we sped off and down the road. Back on the road, nothing seemed right. There were no stars. That was when I first noticed. I was too shaken to think of it, but there were no clouds that could be blotting them out. But there were just a vast night sky devoid of light. Then, a few minutes later, after we begun driving, at least driving forward, still sweating, breathing heavily, we passed a gas station. My heart skipped a beat. The gas station was a half hour away in the opposite directions. All the lights were on, and I saw the door sliding open, and as we passed it, Katie was in such hysterics, she found it hard to keep driving. We stopped the car in the middle of the desolate road, and I decided to switch seats so that I could drive. She shuffled across into my seat, and we opened the door to get out. As soon as I did, outside, the foul stench of the basement overwhelmed me. I gagged, vomited down the side of the car, and that's when I noticed the runner. A pale white thing sprinting towards us through the fog, its limbs practically a blur. I couldn't make out no face, or how long it had been following us, or running after us in the night. I got into the driver's seat as quickly as possible, and we drove off again. Katie whimpered, and I silently prayed. Then we passed the gas station again. The door was open now. There were two figures standing at the door waiting. We forced ourselves onward. We both became aware of the soft, barely audible weeping in the back seats. Neither of us dared to turn around. "Ignore it," I whispered, trembling as my hands gripped the steering wheel, moving as fast as physically possible. Katie curled up into fetal position, holding her head in her hands, and that's when the wailing increased and became extremely loud, ear-piercing, and horrific. I finally ordered myself to end it, and I looked back behind me. For a split second, I thought it was a girl in the white dress looking back up to me, but she was gone as soon as she had appeared. I checked the seats carefully. There was nothing but my tiredness to fear. I had completely lost track of the road. I drove on all through the night. Katie whimpered, and I touched her once, and she screamed. I never tried to do that again after that. The noises from the back seat started up again as we passed the gas station twice more. This is becoming too fucking weird. It was like we were on a small planet, and we were driving around in circles. Now, I should mention that the people at the door were closer and clearer every time we pass it. The finest little slither of red light had begun to settle on the horizon. It was dark as hell, but at least we were able to get on the road ahead of me now. Katie had been silent, face concealed under her hands for some time. I decided to check in and turn on the radio. At first, there was only static. Instead of time or anything at all, the digital clock only appeared to be black. I fiddled with the dial, trying to change the damn station. In between the static, I found only one audible channel. It had a high-pitched buzz in the background, and it simply stated, "Writer's note, UVB-76. It was a man mumbling numbers and names under his breath. 29 Lucy, 30 Adam, 31 Katie. I switched back to static, and I knew which name was next. When we got to Katie's friend's house in the morning, it was overcast, and everywhere it had the smell of rain on it. Her friends weren't home, and Katie's friends lived way out in the country, with no one else around in a mile. The grass was climbing the walls outside, and I begun to think to myself, how the fuck long had they been out? As soon as we were inside, Katie started whimpering again, and I realized that she had been silent, and she was biting her lip so hard that blood was trickling down her chin, and the skin around her mouth was torn as she chewed through it. She grabbed a newspaper and masking tape and begun blacking out the windows. After the night's events, I didn't know whether I would be insane to join her or to stop her. I simply watched as she covered the windows and jammed the door, turned the lights off, and for some time, it could have been minutes, it could have been hours, we sat silent in the dark. I offered to turn the television on, but Katie said nothing, sitting blank and comatose. I turned the television on anyway. It was grainy, black, and white images flickered before us. That's when a white face with empty eyes and possibly a huge smile flashed up on the screen. Its smile was growing wider and wider the longer you stared into it. And the sound of weeping came from, was it from the television or was it from the house? I couldn't tell, and that's when I turned off the TV. It's been 3 days now, and I haven't seen Katie all today. She spent her time in the closet crying. I once tore open the door and screamed at her, and she screamed back. Her face was contorting into something grotesque, inhuman. I slammed it back in her face. The phone rings often. A voice, my mother, I believe, whispering under her breath. The only thing I can catch is snippets of, "Come back. You're always welcome to come back." Sometimes, in the background, I hear something quietly chuckling. I hang up without saying a single thing. Usually, the bathroom is shining white, and I hear the shower running, and we'll walk in to find nothing. Nothing at all. Then, when I'm in the bathroom, I will hear the television flick back on. and it always goes to that face. In the background, there are muttering voices now. I've called the police twice. All it gets is a whispering woman's voice. I called Katie's friends too, just as fruitlessly. There are knocks at the door a lot now. Through the newspaper, on the other side of the windows, I see their hands against the glass slide down, and they do this for hours sometimes. They press their eyes up against the glass through the holes in the newspaper. At night, we hear screaming from the guest room, so I boarded it up. Sometimes I find tiny pieces of glass on the ground, and I find a leak springs up maybe once a day, every day, ever since maybe 3 days ago. Black spots of mold have appeared on the walls, and the smell throughout the house is seeping in from my room. This odor is decay. I pray hopelessly, and I swear to God, I wish I had never gotten out of that car. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, That Creepy Reading, and I know it's a little late at night for this upload, but I kinda slept in all day, and I had to do this narration as quick as possible. I've been narrating since about maybe 5 p.m., and I finished it up around 7:40. But what I will tell you is that this story was pleasantly okay. I'm not gonna lie, this story has a bit of build-up. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can probably tell that this most likely did not happen, but what you can say is that this story has a decent amount of tension, decent amount of build-up, and a monster that is indeed creepy. So, you know, I think this story is a fantastic example of what a creepypasta can be. And considering that it came from the web and isn't overly pretentious with the amount of text walls it gives you, I gotta say that I enjoyed this little lovely tale. As per usual, during the first hour after this narration, I will be in my app called Amino Horror or Horror Amino, and I'll be in the chat room TCR's Creepy Corner. If you download the app, links in the description, and go to that chat room, you'll be able to talk to me for the first hour after this video is uploaded. I should also mention that I'll probably be in there a little bit longer than just an hour because, you know, gotta let people in. But generally speaking, if you're hearing this, just download the app. It's a really good one. There's horror movie reviews and a lot of horror content that you can find on there because a lot of other content creators post their videos on there. What-de-do? Anyway, with that being said, I'm your host at Creepy Reading, and I'm signing off.